Now, the next most frequently asked question, a very popular question from the sister especially, is what about a pregnant or breastfeeding mother and fasting in Ramadan? What is the ruling on it? Well, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has clarified the matter for us, as was reported by Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, Abu Dawood, Ibn Majah, Imam Ahmad, may Allah have mercy on them all, and classified as Sahih by Shaykh Al-Bani rahimullah, the version of Abu Dawood rahimullah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah has relieved the traveler of half of the prayer and of the duty to fast, and He has relieved the pregnant and nursing mothers, يعني of the duty to fast. So there is ease for the breastfeeding mothers and the pregnant sisters, ease in Islam. And if it's too difficult for her, she does not have to fast, basically. This was reiterated by Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen rahimullah in Fatawa Siyam, as well as in the Majmu' al-Fatawa by Shaykh ibn Baz rahimullah, where he said that with regard to pregnant women and breastfeeding mothers, it is proven in the hadith of Anas ibn Malik, amongst the others, as reported by Imam Ahmad rahimullah and the authors of As-Sunan, with the Sahih Isnad, the Sahih chain of reporters, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam granted them an ease, allowing them not to fast, and regarded them as being like travelers, and amongst others regarded them as amongst the sick. From this, it is known they may not fast, but they have to make up the fast later, just like a traveler or the sick. So the fuqaha are of the view that the pregnant women or the breastfeeding mothers, they come under the same heading as those who are sick or traveling. As mentioned in, for instance, the 185th ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيدًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر. يعني whoever is ill or on a journey, then an equal number of other days, يعني they have to be made up. Allah intends for you ease, and He does not intend for you hardship. Now, this 185th ayah, according to one opinion, applies to everybody who's sick, no matter how mild his sickness. Like, for instance, some of the Salaf, including Ata'a rahimullah, applied in general terms, and this was also the view favored by Al-Bukhari rahimullah. But then the scholars, the majority of the scholars, including the four Imams, rejected the general application and restricted it to cases of sickness where fasting causes hardship. I mean, based on the reason for which the ruling of not fasting was prescribed in the first place. Yani, not fasting makes it easier. Now, Abu Dawood rahimullah has reported that Ibn Abbas radlahu an said, now it's a long athar, but to come to the main point, that this concession is also granted to the pregnant and breastfeeding women if they fear, yani if they fear harm. And the isnad of this was classified as good, Hasan, by Imam An-Nawawi rahimullah. So basically, Ibn Abbas radhiyallahu anh restricted the concession granted to pregnant and breastfeeding women where they fear harm to themselves or their child, right? And this is the same opinion of the five madahib. In the Hanafi madhab, for instance, Al-Jassas rahimullah said in Ahkam al-Quran that this concession is granted to the pregnant and breastfeeding women, limited to cases where they fear for themselves or their child. If there's no such fear, then the concession is not granted. On the other hand, the Maliki madhab also says, for instance, in Sharh Mukhtasar Khalil, that this particular concession is subject to the condition that her child will not accept any other feed, otherwise she will be obliged to fast. The Shafi'i madhab says that if a breastfeeding woman fears that her milk supply will be adversely affected, she should break her fast or not fast. And Imam An-Nawawi rahimullah also said the same and reiterated the view. Hanbali madhab, for instance, Ibn Muflih rahimullah said in Al-Furu' that it is makruh for pregnant or breastfeeding women to fast if there is a fear that they or their child may be harmed. And Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimullah also reiterates it. And then in the Zahiri madhab, for instance, Ibn Hazm rahimullah says in Al-Muhalla that if a breastfeeding woman fears that she may have too little milk for her child, and there's no one else to feed the child. Or if a pregnant woman feels or fears for her fetus, then she may break the fast or not fast. In fact, it is also further said in this school of thought that in the case of a pregnant woman, the fetus is regarded as part of her body. So the fear for him is like the fear of damage to any of her limbs or physical faculties. And Imam Shawkani, rahimullah, also reiterates the same. So the scholars stated that the concession here not to fast in the case of pregnant or breastfeeding mothers is based on the condition that it may be too difficult for them. And Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah summarized it in his Fatawa as-Siyam when he says, in the case of pregnant women, for instance, there are two cases, two scenarios that may apply. Number one, if she's healthy and strong and does not find fasting difficult, and it does not affect her fetus, and there's no fear of it, then she's actually obliged to fast. She has no excuse not to do so. On the other hand, if the pregnant woman is not able to fast because either the pregnancy is advanced or because she is physically weak or for some other reason, in the case where she fears even that she or her child may be adversely affected, she should not fast, especially if her fetus is likely to be harmed, right? It is actually mandatory on her not to fast. If she does not fast, then just like others who do not fast for valid reason, for instance, the traveler or the sick, she just has to later on make up the fast. If she gives birth, she has to make up those fasts after she becomes pure from nifas before the next Ramadan. But sometimes, especially in the case where after the excuse of pregnancy is lifted, immediately another excuse follows, for instance, breastfeeding. So the breastfeeding mother who may need food and drink herself, especially during the long summer days when it's really hot, so she may need to fast so that she can nourish her child with her milk. In this case, then it is said, do not fast, because the excuse is still there and she can later make up the fast. However, the bottom line is, with regard to the pregnant woman, she must fast while pregnant unless she fears, because of the advancement of the pregnancy or the weakness of hers or the harm to the child, that it is dangerous, it is going to be difficult, then she is granted the concession not to fast. And whenever that danger is removed, is taken away, is lifted from her, she must make up the fast before the next Ramadan. Now, what happens if she doesn't? That will be addressed in another session. But look at the practicality, the beauty, the ease of Islam. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most compassionate.